Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Caroline Leaf, and today we're going to be talking about how we perceive stress. We all hear about that word all the time, but just let me first tell you about my background. As you can see, for those of you that are watching, for those of you that are listening, I am sitting in my office, and behind me, I have a view of the sea, a phenomenal view of the sea. We're on the 41st floor. And I wanted to show you this background because we're talking about stress. So I want you just to see this beautiful background with the sky and the clouds and the sea to help you manage with stress as we talk about stress. So the double meaning in the background. Okay, so it's not a film, it's not a filter, it's an actual, this is what my background is. It's quite beautiful. Okay, so we are going to be talking about how we perceive stress. We're going to be talking about how to flip the switch on stress, which has everything to do with how we perceive stress. So without further ado, let's dive in and let's begin. So we see so many headlines, and so many of those headlines are scary stress headlines, like you stress, you're going to die kind of thing. So let me just read you three. Chronic stress puts your health at risk. Best not to stress the small stuff because it could kill you. I mean, I'm already stressing just by the headline. Stress can literally kill you. Here's how. We see these headlines all over the media, all over the different types of media, magazines, etc., books, book titles, etc. But the problem with headlines like this is that they put you into toxic stress. And that in itself is already changing your neurophysiology in the wrong direction. So it affects how you're perceiving the stress. In fact, what I've said here, these headlines just make you more stressed, more anxious, and overwhelmed. But really, stress can be good for you. If you understand how to shift or flip the switch on stress, you can actually make it work for you and not against you. So let's dive in and see how to do this. How is stress good for you? So it's all based around how you perceive stress. There's been some great research studies done on this, and I'll put a couple of these links in the show notes as well. But essentially what they've shown is that the way that you actually look at stress, so if you say, oh my gosh, this is terrible, this is so bad, I'm so stressed, in that negative tone, in that negative sense, and your whole body tenses up, that actually puts you at a disadvantage on a neurophysiological level. So in other words, you literally weaken your immune system and your whole body goes into a toxic state, and that you're not going to have as much clarity in your mind when your body's in that state. And that then is going to affect how you make decisions, but it's also that level of neurophysiological change that occurs is actually not good for you. So I'm just going to pull up one of the studies, and one of these studies was done, it's published in PubMed, and it's called, Does the Perception That Stress Affects Health Matter? And the answer is yes. The association with health and mortality. And I'm just going to read the conclusion. High amounts of stress and the perception that stress impacts health are each associated with poor health and mental health, poor mental health. So in other words, the perception, how you see stress. If you perceive that stress impacts health, it's associated with worse health, physically and mentally. So this is so powerful. That's why I'm stressing it. The way you look at stress, and I'm not saying stress is going to go away, because it's not. We know stress is with us all day long, and there's a reason for it, which I'll explain in a moment. But our perception of how that stress is going to affect us influences your physical and mental health. Okay, so I want to help you with that. And so the other last sentence of the conclusion, individuals who perceive that stress affects their health and reported large amounts of stress had increased risk of premature death. Now, I'm not trying to make you scared. I'm not trying to do one of those scary headlines. I just want to show you that there's a lot of research out there around how we look at stress and how it affects us. So coming back to this point, if we look at something, the way that perception is the view, it's the attitude that you have. So if you look at stress in a negative way versus a positive way, then it's going to affect you mentally and physically in a bad way. So let me give you an example. At the moment, we're going through a lot of changes. This has been a year of extreme changes in our life, extreme challenges from every angle that you can believe. Some of the worst things that have ever happened to me in my life happened to me this year. And so it's been a stressful year. Now, here's the rest of the story. Our most recent stressful thing, which is not actually a bad one, it was a good one, was really good stuff, but still stressful because it's still a lot happening, was that we put two properties on the market, or two homes, and we sold both within a week, not expecting to do that. And at the same time, we had to then buy another house, and we found one 4 days later. So in 10 days, we sold two houses and bought another house. Now that's a lot because it's great, exciting, but it also, if you look at the list of stressors, selling and moving is one, it's right up there as very high stress. So, I mean, we've had just last week, we were packing up. We spent 3 days packing up our one home, and now we pack up this home and just after Christmas and move at the end of January. And so basically, this is a lot of three big high stress things all at once. We're moving to another state as well. So these are high stress things. Now, and then also in the midst of all of this, the day that we sold the first house, our eldest daughter had her second baby. So that's amazing. That's exciting. It's just another amazing thing to happen. So a lot happened in a 10-day period. And on top of work, I didn't, work still happens. It still carries on. And so now I can do one of two things. I can say, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to pack up two houses in kind of 6 weeks and organize all of that in two different states and move to a third state and find a home? So once we sold the two houses, we didn't have another home. So suddenly we're homeless in a sense. And how are we going to find a house? And it was a lot. So either I can, oh my gosh, this is so stressful, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Or I could have said it differently, and I could say something like, we've sold two houses. That is interesting. How are we going to do this? You need to find another home. How are we going to do this? Because I need to help my daughter with her new baby that's just been born. How am I going to do this? That's interesting. So notice the shift in my tone. Okay, so the way you talk about the stress will influence how your brain actually works and your body. So you've got that as you experience something, you've heard me teach, first build the thought in your mind. Your mind perceives it first, then that builds the thought in your thought field, then that goes into your brain as the copies of that thought field are made and then put into your brain as in your network, and then copies of that are made and put into your body. So it's a mind-brain-body connection. So every experience, in this case, we're talking about selling two houses in 1 week and buying another house, is experienced through my mind thought field, became a thought, became a duplicate copy in the brain as a network, and in my body as multiple networks. So I have this whole connection, okay? So if it's there, it's in there. But added to that is the flavor of my perception. So it's colored and flavored by my perception. So as I'm receiving this, if it's excitement, I can do this. This is amazing. It's a new challenge. Wow, we're going to be in a new state. We're going to be close. The reason we've done all this, by the way, is to be close to our grandchildren and close to our children, because we're all over the place. And we decided, hey, this is enough. I'm 61. My husband's 70, just turned 70 recently. And we want to be near our kids. We've got two baby grandchildren now, and we want to be near our children and streamline our life. So this is the reason we made this decision. So it's a good decision. It's an exciting decision, but it all happened really fast. And so the way that I look at this is going to have an immediate neurophysiological effect on my brain and body. So if I see it as something, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? This is terrible. It's going to affect my immune system. It's going to affect my blood pressure. It's going to affect the way that my gut is going to work to digest food. It's going to, in general, create a vulnerability in my mind-brain-body network, so that I will, in my mind, the response will be increased levels of anxiety and increased levels of worry. And you know what, that can spin into all kinds of things. And in my body, there's an increased vulnerability that I'm going to maybe, if I don't get it under control, increased blood pressure can affect cholesterol, can affect this, one thing can lead to another, and then that can create bigger problems. So I would increase my vulnerability to damaging effects to my mental and physical health by 35 to 75% if I don't see stress correctly. So stress is good for you. I know you've maybe heard about eustress, which is the positive stress, and you've heard about bad stress, but let's talk about it. Stress, when you hear about stress, we think of cortisol, we think of your hypothalamic pituitary axis, you may or may not think of that, the HPA axis. And so we know that adrenaline, and we hear about those kinds of things as though cortisol is bad and adrenaline's bad and HPA axis is bad. They're not bad. You need cortisol and adrenaline to be alive. You need your HPA axis to keep you in balance and to keep you focused. So the purpose of stress is to help you to deal with all the multitude of things that are coming at you every day and to keep you in a very focused state on a level of high alert to be able to help you to do what you need to do, to respond in the correct way, to get into that state where you are not lethargic and just giving up, but that you're focused and able to make good decisions, and to keep your immune system in a good, healthy state, to keep your blood pressure at the right, flowing at balanced and at the right levels, to keep your heart pumping correctly, to keep your breathing, getting the correct amount of oxygen through your body and so on. That's what good stress does. So it does great stuff physiologically to keep you alert and focused. The issue is when we tip into toxic stress. So you want the right amount of cortisol flowing, you want the right amount of adrenaline flowing, you want balance between the neurochemistry. Now, the minute that we slip into toxic stress, and we flip into toxic stress by saying, oh my gosh, how am I going to do it? This is terrible. There's no ways I can pick up 2 houses and organize all the things and all the different things, find movers, organize the packing. What do I keep? What do I give away? What do I throw away? What do I donate? Just the details that go into a move, all the electricity and lights and change of addresses and the complexities. We've been in the one house for 14 years. There's a lot of established things there. So I can see all of that as, it's just too much. I've got to work. I've got to spend time with my great. So that would basically increase the amount of cortisol. It would take it out of its Goldilocks principle, which is balance. It would increase the amount of adrenaline. It would accelerate a response in the immune system in my body that would then send out too many immune factors, and I can get an autoimmune reaction. And my body starts fighting against itself. Blood pressure through the roof for long periods of time is not good at all for you. So that's what that would actually do. But if I shift it and say, this is exciting, well, I can organize this. I've got this friend who actually works part-time for us that can go to move a company. We can speak to them. We can arrange that. We can go on these days. We can do this on this day. I've already packed up some of this stuff. So in other words, if I can keep myself in that good state and sit down with my husband and we write out and discuss the whole thing and plan it out in a very excited way. And yeah, this is going to be a lot of work. What I'll do there is I'll keep my HPA axis working for me and not against me. I'll keep the cortisol levels in that Goldilocks range, the right range, just right. And the adrenaline and all the other biochemistry that goes along with the thalamic pituitary axis, the HPA axis with my adrenal glands and so on. I would also have my immune system calm down to the point where it will be on high alert, but not going crazy against itself, my blood pressure, etc. So that's how important this is. We've got to tell ourselves anything that happens. You can be crying. You can say, okay, this is so much. I'm sad and crying. Or I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to be okay. You can have the tears, let them out. Maybe even let a few that, oh my gosh, how can I do all of this? Let it come out, but don't stay there. Do that neurocycle immediately. Allow those emotions, gather awareness of those signals, reflect, okay, there's a lot to do, whatever, reflect on why, maybe do a little bit of a mind storm, recheck. Okay, this is what's happened. What am I going to do? I'm going to sit down. I'm going to make a list. I'm going to work out all the things. I'm going to work out the logistics. I'm going to work out the date. And this is just so exciting. I'm going to be near my grandkids versus falling apart and I can't do this, etc., etc. So the way we perceive it is so important. Okay, so focus on the next immediate step that you can do. Okay, focus on the next immediate step that you can do. So when there are so many things that you need to do, so we've spoken about how we flip it and what it does in our body, but I mentioned about I sat down with my husband and we made a list, which we did. Now, that list is big. It got huge. We've moved one house. We've emptied one house and it's in storage waiting to move. And now we're planning to pack up the next one and we just got to move people in. So there's a lot on that list. So make the whole list, but then break that list down and say, what is the next immediate thing I can do? What can I do today? Maybe today after making this list, all I need to do is go watch a TV show because it's the evening now and I need to just chill because I can't do any more today. But then that's the next immediate thing. Or maybe the next immediate thing is just make that first phone call to get someone in to come and give you a quote for the move. Or but whatever that next, it could just be something as simple as phoning a friend to say, hey, can I just talk to you about all these things going on in my life so that you just get it off your chest. So it's focus on the next immediate step. So yes, make the big list, but if the big list is starting to overwhelm you, stop and just focus on what you can do in the next moment, and then in the next moment. And then you maybe come back to your list and add to that list. And initially the list is this long, and then you do suddenly think of other things, and then the list grows and of the things you have to do. But don't look at that list and keep adding and getting more stressed, toxically stressed. Just if you're feeling overwhelmed, just block off all the others and just look at one. Put a piece of paper there, or if it's on your iPhone, just cover it up or something, or highlight just the one and say, what can I do right now? What is the next step? Focus on the next smaller step. So when there's so many things you need to do, what's the next step that you can take? Don't focus on everything. Focus on one thing at a time. So you can write it all down, but focus on one thing at a time. Get that done. Don't do that one thing thinking, oh God, I've got all these other things to do as well. I've done that, where you doing the one thing, but you're then focusing on all the other things you've got to do. And so you're not doing this one, you're just stressing out about ones you're not doing and what you still got to do. Like if I've got to do a whole lot of podcasts and meetings, and I mean, I have to do this all the time, guys, because my days are so full. Like even today when I'm taping, I have to tape 5 podcasts and interviews and 3 meetings. And that's like 9 hours of work, and I've got to try and fit in some relaxation time in between to eat and breathe and just chill a little bit. Otherwise, it's not going to be efficient. And I did wake up this morning thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And then I thought, like, you know what to do? Keep yourself in the right state, do a little neurocycle, acknowledge how you feel, and decide what's the very first thing that you're going to do, which I decided to take my dogs for my regular walk. So I was going to cancel my walk. So let me start earlier. No, I need that fresh air. I need that sunshine. I need that walk with my dogs, the sunrise walk with my dogs and my husband. And that got me in physical, moving, fresh air, etc. That's what I focused on. Then I came back and I thought, okay, first interview starts at 9. Let me get ready. I won't think about the others. Everything's in my schedule. I'll get ready and think of the first interview because I've got a gap between the next one to think of the next one. I'm not going to allow myself to think of that. That's what I'm talking about. And that's how I am totally calm, getting through the day, getting everything done. I've kept myself in healthy stress. I've perceived the day as something I can get through. It's a lot to get through. It is stressful, but that's a good stress. I'm going to keep it in the stressful zone that's healthy by focusing on just the next step and keeping my perception right and saying, this is exciting. I can get through all this. I'm talking about stuff I love talking about. I'm interviewing cool people, and the meetings I'm having are so interesting. So I'm saying those things to myself to flip this switch on stress, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I can't get through this. It's so much. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do that because I know what it does to me, but I'm working at it. So I'm not just going to say it's easy, but it's easier. I'm so used to practicing this now that each day when I feel this, or each time I feel this, I acknowledge it, do my little neurocycle, get myself back on track. My active reach is, what's the next step? Okay, so what you can do is write down everything you need to do and focus on the one thing you wrote down that you can do next. That's another, I just wanted to remind you about that. So what can you do next? And like I gave the example earlier on, that I decided to go for a walk this morning. I can do that. It's 6:30 in the morning. My first interview's at 9. What I can do is my regular walk. It's enough time to do that, and I can chill and relax and get myself in the right calm state. And I tell you, the day's been fantastic so far. The days that I haven't done that and I've just dived in and I just get thrown by everything. No, like the littlest thing will throw me off. Like there'll be suddenly something that comes in from one of my team, and I've got to respond immediately, and it wasn't on my list of to do, and I've got to do another thing. And that if I'm not in that correct stress zone, if I'm not perceiving stress as correct, I'll see that, oh my gosh, I've got to do this too. And I'll sometimes catch myself saying that, and I'll stop, oops, reverse that, delete, rewind, go back, change perception. Okay, that's got to be done. When does it suit me to do it? How urgent is it? Okay, I'll do it there. It's got to be done there. Well, I'll do it there. And I text back and say, I'll get to this, but I'm doing it at this time. So acknowledge it, do the little neurocycle. Active reach is to then put up the boundary. When can I do it? When level of urgency, boundary with, I'm not going to let someone else's demands influence my choice of how I'm going to handle this, and do it at the right time. But I can do that if I'm in healthy stress. In healthy stress, I can think straight. So can you. In toxic stress, you cannot. Okay. Then the third thing you can do, third little tip, create a done list, DONE, a done list. This is like such a cool technique, okay? So to help you not focus on what you didn't get done, but to focus on what you did do. So not a didn't do list. So you can make your list, like all my list that I'm making for these moves of two houses, so sale of two houses and move to the new one, and all the work projects that have got deadlines in between. It's kind of a big list. Okay, so I've got those lists. I'm focusing on the next thing that I can handle, but in addition, I'm making a done list. So what have I done? So far what I've done today is I've done the walk, I got ready, I've done the first interview, I've done the second interview, I've done one of the meetings, and I've handled a few unexpected that have come up. Hey, I'm so proud of myself. Made the list. I made the list and gave myself a pat on the back. I felt like I'd achieved something. I felt like I'd progressed. Now that was per day. Now let's take my big thing of what's happening in the next sort of 6 weeks of my life. I'm going to also put down the done list. We have been to our Dallas home. We've packed it up. Everything's in storage, waiting to go to Cleveland, where we're moving to. And so I've got the done list. We did this, and I made this list, and I felt so good when I was starting to think, how are we going to do all of this? I started making a list of all the things that we've done towards the move. And then I started making all the things that we've done in terms of the work stuff. And then what was also making me potentially shift into toxic stress was I want to spend some quality time with my husband. I just don't want to be working, and I want to spend quality time with my children and my grandchildren. Okay, they're not with me physically, but phoning them, FaceTime. I don't want to not have that special time with my family. That is so special. Like talking to my little 15-month-old granddaughter on FaceTime is like a highlight of my day. I'm not going to eliminate that. I'm going to keep that in. So that goes on the list that I can do next, and then onto my done list. I've got to talk to my little granddaughter and so on. Okay, so create a done list. You stress about the things you haven't done, but do you ever reflect back on what you have done? Guys, please balance what you have done with what you haven't done. Even if you discipline yourself to a 3-to-1 ratio. So let's say that you're stressing about what you haven't done and you feel it. Oh, I didn't do this. I didn't do this. Stop and do a done list. So for the one thing that you haven't done, find 3 things that you have done. It's such a cool exercise. You can try it right now as soon as you finish listening to this podcast. I haven't done this. Catch yourself, acknowledge it, whatever. Write 3 things that you have done. And even if you can only find 2, or if you have to draw from yesterday, it doesn't matter. What have you done? And give yourself the benefit. It shifts your neurophysiology. It keeps you in healthy stress and not shifting into toxic stress where everything goes kind of crazy. Okay, so give yourself credit. The minute you give yourself credit, you are flipping stress from toxic, looking at the to-do, to positive, looking at the done list. Okay, so the end of the day, instead of saying, this is what I didn't do, switch it to what I have accomplished. So this is another key area where we can easily slip into toxic stress, and that is at the end of the day. And I've shared this before on podcasts, but essentially, I would get into bed every night for the first literally 10 years of our marriage, and I would say to my husband, and we've been married 35 years now, and I would say, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. And I get so frustrated with myself and even quite depressed about it. And eventually, my husband was really patient. He's amazing, okay? And he would say to me, why don't you, instead of saying what you haven't done, what you have done? And now if I ever slip back when I get into bed and I start saying, I mean, it's so seldom now that I do. But if I do, Mac will immediately say, what have you done? Even during the day, he'll sometimes remind me if I forget. So switch this is what I didn't do. Switch this is to what I have accomplished. Okay, so let's recap. How is stress good for you? The way you perceive stress shifts your neurophysiology. Stress is good for you. It helps you focus. It helps you concentrate. It helps you have clarity of mind. It helps you make good decisions. It helps you access wisdom. It helps keep your physical body, brain and body ready to do whatever activity is required for the day. Where it slips into toxic stress is how you perceive the stress. Okay? If you perceive it as negative, it flips you into toxic. If you perceive it as positive, it keeps you in a very healthy state of good stress. Focus on the immediate issue, okay? And I'm going to throw in a little extra tip to help you here. Well, an extra part of this, focusing on the immediate thing. I want to tell you about the zigzag method. Okay. This is something that I just made up. Okay. The zigzag method. And it helps me so much. So when you focus on the immediate next thing, what it helps you is it helps you to zigzag. Think of a zigzag. It's zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. When you focus on the immediate next thing, and in fact, let's just put the zigzag method applies to all three of these things. When you focus on the immediate next thing, when you perceive stress as positive for you and not negative for you, which is the first point I made, okay? The way you perceive stress influences whether it's going to be toxic or positive. Number one. Number two, when you focus on the immediate next thing, and when you create the done list, those three things, you are keeping yourself zigzagging, because zigzagging through life. You get up, something happens, knocks you down, you got to get up, you got to start something, you got to end it, and you can get stuck or you can move. So you want to keep zigzagging. Okay, you may fall down a bit, you get up. You don't want to just zig and not zag. If you get into toxic stress, you're going to just zig. It's going to be a lot of zigs and no zags until you feel incomplete, you feel frustrated, you get bits and pieces done, and it just accumulates. So flipping the switch on stress means you got to get into the zigzag zone. Okay, hope you understand that. Okay, so therefore, to flip the script on stress, remember how you perceive stress will make stress work for you or against you and get you into the zigzag method. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next time.